Right, it is 12 p.m., so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. This is Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar webinar, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you all about solar and hopefully answer as many questions as I can. So today we're going to be going over the basics of how solar technology works, talk about what would qualify your specific home for solar, go over energy storage as a potential addition you can make to your solar system, go over all of the incentives that exist here in Oregon, and then talk about how to get started with the process. My name is Grace Hardy, and I'm a program manager at Solar Oregon. Solar Oregon is a 42-year-old nonprofit. We got started in the 70s advocating for solar as the ideal energy source, and we've changed a lot over the past 40 years, but we're still focused on education, outreach, community, and advocacy around solar here in Oregon. So as part of that, we have our regular How to Go Solar talks, which is what this is right now. We also have a number of solar tours throughout the year. We do Solar Eyes campaigns, which are campaigns to get whole neighborhoods to go solar together. And then we also like to connect people and create community through peer-to-peer education. We are a member-based nonprofit, and so we would like to give a thank you to all of you who are members. If you're not a member but would like to be, you can click the link below or on the screen. I'm also going to be pasting some links into the chat that I will be referring to throughout the presentation. We encourage you to follow us on social media and Eventbrite. This is where we post our upcoming events and webinars. So if you're interested and enjoy this one, we have many others throughout the year. One of which that is coming up is a panel discussion next Tuesday at 12 p.m. that will be about what's happening with solar panel recycling. And we have 3 great panelists, so if you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend it. Also on the 13th, we have our annual meeting at Shine Distillery, and this is kind of just a celebration of the end of the year for us. So if you want to come and clink glasses and learn about what we've been doing throughout the year and talk to other people from local climate nonprofits, this is a great event to attend. I'd like to give a huge thanks to Energy Trust of Oregon. They are an independent nonprofit that provides resources to help all sorts of stakeholders make their energy use more efficient and affordable. They don't quite serve the entire state, but they serve the clients of the major utilities listed on the screen, and they are supporting this workshop and support a lot of the work we do. So huge thanks to Energy Trust for all their support. So at the end of this presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A. Throughout the presentation, I encourage you to put all questions in the Q&A box, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. We ask that you put the questions in this Q&A box instead of the chat because it makes it easier for me to find them at the end of the presentation. I also, before we get started, I'm going to launch a couple quick polls. These help us learn who are reaching through these presentations so that we can make sure we're reaching out to a wide swath of Oregonians and improving our presentations as we go. Awesome. There are 2 more polls I'm going to have you all fill out, and then we can get into the good stuff. We have a few more seconds on this one. Awesome. And then one more. This one just asks about your familiarity with some incentives we are going to be talking about today. Great. Thank you all for taking the time to fill that out. Let's get into the exciting stuff. So how does solar work? This is a diagram of a basic solar system. Here we have what you probably first think of when you think of solar, the photovoltaic panel. And this panel takes energy from the sun and converts it into DC electricity. Now your home electrical panel uses AC electricity. So before you can use the electricity produced by this panel, it has to pass through what is called an inverter or a microinverter that transforms the DC electricity into AC electricity. Once it passes through the inverter, it can be used by your home electrical panel. If you are producing more electricity than your home is using at a given time, the excess electricity will flow through your home, through the utility meter and onto the grid. If you are producing less electricity than you're using at a given time, let's say at night you're not producing electricity, but you're using electricity in your home, you can still draw electricity from the grid into your home. So when you install a solar panel, your contractor will also install this bidirectional utility meter that allows you to both export electricity onto the grid and import electricity from the grid. There are two main types of inverters. The first is a more classic inverter that is usually installed next to the home's electrical panel. And the second is a microinverter. And these are these little black boxes shown on the photo on the right, and they are installed underneath each solar panel. Both of these types of inverters do essentially the same thing, converting DC electricity into AC electricity. They have some minor pros and cons depending on the circumstance of your specific home and solar system. So we recommend you talk to your solar contractor and they will help you figure out which inverter is best for you. There are also two types of mounting for solar panels. The first is a roof mount, and this is most common, especially in dense urban environments where there isn't a lot of room for ground-mounted panels. The second is a ground-mounted panel, and these are more common in rural environments where you have the room to put them, say, in a field next to the house. The benefit of a ground-mounted panel is that you don't have to worry or think about your roof condition before installing it. The downside is that it can add some additional system costs, and this is mainly because you have to run a copper wire from the ground-mounted panel and into the home. And the copper wire itself is quite expensive, and there's additional labor costs that come from trenching that copper wire into the ground. Both of these are completely viable depending on the space you have, and you can talk to your solar contractor about the costs of each of these. Net metering is a really great tool we have here in Oregon. It allows you to utilize the electricity you are producing for your solar panels throughout the entire year. So in these diagrams, in these graphs, the orange bar shows the electricity you are producing through your solar panels, and the blue bar shows the electricity you are consuming off of the grid. So during summer months, you are producing more electricity than you are consuming. And so this excess electricity that you are exporting onto the grid, you receive credits for. During the winter months, when you are producing less electricity than you are using, you can use the credits that you gain during the summer months to offset the cost of that electricity that you're pulling from the grid. These credits don't carry over year to year, but they purposely set the year to start in March, and this allows you to build up all of your sunny summer month credits during the first half of the net metering year, and then use those credits over the second half, the less sunny half of the year. Overall, solar is really great because it can potentially, if you have enough roof space, cover 100% of your energy costs. You still pay, give or take, $11 or $12 a month for interconnection, but if you have the space for a full-size system, you would pay nothing beyond that interconnection fee each month. So it's important to think about your own home and whether it would actually work for solar. First, you want to think about the system size, and this should be primarily based on how much electricity you consume in a given year. So as I mentioned with the net metering slide, the net metering credits don't carry over year to year. So if you build this massive solar system that's producing a lot of excess electricity, you are not going to see the cost savings of that electricity because you won't be able to utilize those credits at the end of the year. Because of this, you want to size your system based on the average amount of electricity you are going to be using in a given year. Some other factors you want to take into account are available space, budget, the aesthetics of placing the panels on your roof. All of these things can go into the system size decision. System size is measured in kilowatts. In Oregon, the average residential system size is around 6 kilowatts, and this is typically around 18 to 20 panels. However, system size can vary widely, and anywhere between around 6 and 35 panels is fairly common. So when thinking if your home is right for solar, you want to think about what access to solar your roof has throughout the year. So in this diagram, it shows the path the sun takes from the summer solstice to the winter solstice. And as you can see, this path is tilted towards the south. Because of this, south-facing roofs will receive the most sun resource throughout the year. East and west-facing roofs are also viable options, and we don't recommend north-facing roofs. And this is because, especially during those winter months, that north-facing roof will not be receiving very much sunlight. You also want to think about the shade on your roof. If you have great big trees or tall buildings next to your home that shade significant portions of your roof, those solar panels are not going to be receiving enough sun resource to produce electricity for you. However, this is often hard for a person to self-assess, so we really recommend you talk to a solar contractor who will help you assess whether the shade on your roof is a limiting factor for installing solar. Roof complexity should also be taken into account. So in these two photos, the photo on the left shows a complex roof with multiple different faces and different orientations, and the roof on the right is a simple roof with just two faces. The simple option is the better option, and this is because it allows a more continuous solar system, which is easier and cheaper to install. Complex roofs can often work, but there will be additional installation costs associated with them. Another important factor is the age and condition of your roof. This is because whenever you re-roof, you will need to take your solar off and then reinstall it. Because metal roofs last for a long time, sometimes upwards of 50 years, this is not usually a big concern for metal roofs. With asphalt shingle roofs, the newer is really the better. Specifically for Energy Trust incentives, it requires that you have at least 10 years of roof life to be able to access that incentive. But in general, we recommend if you have an old roof to wait until after you re-roof to install solar. What's underneath your roof may also affect your solar potential. Your roof must be strong enough, not because the solar panels are heavy, but because they increase the wind shear acting on your roof. Newer homes typically have pre-engineered trusses, as shown on the left, and these crossbeams are effective reinforcement and are more than sufficient to support a solar system. Older homes and some newer ones have rafters, and these are single beams extending under the entire height of the roof from eave to ridge. Rafters may also be sufficient for solar unless they span too far of a distance. So if you have rafters that do not lie within conservative span limits, some jurisdictions, specifically Portland has quite strict requirements on this, they might require that you pay an engineer to analyze the strength of your roof. Solar contractors commonly provide this as a service, though it can cost close to $1,000. Further adding to the cost, if the engineer determines that your roof is not strong enough, you might have to add reinforcement, which also most solar contractors can do this for you. We do want to note that even if your roof doesn't meet permitting codes, your roof is likely fine for solar. The permitting codes just tend to be quite stringent. And so this is something to keep in mind when going through the process of working with a solar contractor. So everything I've described so far is just talking about solar. We also want to talk about the possibility of adding storage to your solar system. Batteries, the importance of batteries is that they provide additional energy resilience. And this is becoming increasingly common or increasingly important as grid blackouts become more and more common. So in this photo, you see an example of a grid blackout, and every building that is connected to the grid and does not have solar plus storage loses its power, but the one building that has solar plus storage is able to keep its lights on. So a common misconception with solar is that just by installing solar on your roof, if the grid shuts off, you still have access to that electricity coming from your solar panels. However, when the grid shuts off, if you don't have storage, the grid will also shut off your connection to your solar because it can overload the grid, and there's all sorts of technical details there. But the bottom line is, if you want the additional benefit of energy resilience during a grid shutoff, you are going to want to install storage with your solar system. So why is energy resilience important? As I talked about, grid shutoffs are becoming more common. The most common reason grids shut down are due to storms and squirrels, but things like public safety power shutoffs are becoming more common. These are when utilities shut off the grid intentionally to reduce the risk of wildfire. PGE had some of these earlier this year. There's also the potential for cyber attacks. This hasn't happened yet, but is a possibility. And then the Cascadia seismic hazard, or as it's colloquially called, the big one, is an earthquake that has the potential to shut down the Portland grid for up to 6 weeks and shut down the grid outside of Portland for even longer. By solar plus storage, I'm talking about solar on your roof or ground mounted, and batteries in your garage or shed or somewhere like that. There are many different types of batteries, different brands, different sizes. We are a brand agnostic nonprofit, so we can't recommend a specific battery to you, but if you talk to your solar contractor, they will have recommendations for you and can help answer your questions on this. If you're interested in solar plus storage, you will need to choose the size of your system. System sizes are typically described as partial home backups or whole home backups, and this is determined by how many batteries and how big of batteries you purchase. Whole home backups will require multiple batteries to be installed in your home. So sizing your system depends on what you want to power and for how long. You could choose to power a refrigerator, several lights, and a laptop for a couple of days, let's say, with one battery. With this same battery, you could get rid of the computer, which would allow you to power your lights and refrigerator for longer, or you could add a space heater, which has very high energy use, and your period of autonomy would reduce significantly, possibly to just a couple of hours. So you can either power more things for less time or fewer things for more time. Adding additional batteries can increase the amount you can power and for how long you can power it, but it also increases the system price. Solar allows you to recharge your batteries during the day. However, a typical residential solar system is not big enough to recharge your batteries faster than you're likely to deplete them. So you shouldn't expect an infinite period of autonomy, even with a whole home backup. Once you understand your needs, your contractor can work with you to properly size your system. And you may find that you are also constrained by budget, available space for solar, or your existing electrical system when choosing the size of your backup system. So speaking of your existing electrical system, typically the things you want to power will need to be separated from the rest of the circuits in your home and routed to a new breaker box. This is called the essential loads panel. When choosing your essential loads, you want to focus on which breakers in your current panel you would like to move to the new essential loads panel, because it is difficult and expensive to divide circuits. So it's best to work with what you already have. And let's say you have a circuit in your home that has your refrigerator, a few lights in your kitchen, a couple outlets in your kitchen. You can move that whole circuit into your essential loads panel, and that will be backed up by your battery system. So now that we understand the technology and have learned how to assess our own solar potential, let's look at the money. How much does a solar system cost? So to provide a bigger view at the beginning, this graph shows how costs for solar have fallen significantly over the last decade as technological improvements have been made and it has just been more widely adopted. There are three main incentives for solar here in Oregon. The first is the Federal Solar Investment Tax Credit, or the ITC. And through the Inflation Reduction Act, this was actually just expanded for the next 10 years. The second is the Solar Plus Storage statewide rebate. And the third is the Energy Trust incentives. So the ITC, or the Federal Investment Tax Credit, was just expanded to be a 30% tax credit available for the next 10 years. And this is a dollar per dollar incentive. So 30% of the net cost of the system you will receive back in your tax filings. The state of Oregon also provides this solar plus storage rebate, which can cover up to 60% of your system costs or $5,000, whichever is less. And this is primarily for low-income customers. However, there are still some incentives if you are not a low-income customer. Finally, the Energy Trust of Oregon provides a cash incentive for solar that is available within the Energy Trust territory. So specifically for this incentive, your utility must be PGE or Pacific Power. And if so, you get a $500 incentive. For this, you also must install with an Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor, and I'll talk more about that shortly. Expanding on the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive, so I have their base $500 incentive that you can access, or if you qualify as low or moderate income, instead of getting the $500 incentive, you get solar within reach. And this is a really great program. If you are a Pacific Power customer, you will get $1 per watt up to $6,000. So for a 6 kilowatt system, you will get the full $6,000. If you are a PGE customer, you will get $1.2 per watt up to $7,200. So again, if you have a 6 kilowatt system, you get the full $7,200. And to kind of put in perspective what the threshold is for low or moderate income, if you are a household of 4 residents, the threshold is $112,860 for the year. For the solar plus storage Oregon Department of Energy rebate, there you can get a maximum of $5,000 for solar and a maximum of $2,500 for storage. To get the incentive or the rebate for storage, you have to install it at the same time as you install the solar. And they have a couple of different amounts of rebate depending on if you are low or moderate income qualified. So if you are low or moderate income qualified, you get $1.8 per watt of installed capacity, up to 60% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. If you are not low or moderate income, and you are also eligible for an electric utility incentive, for example, the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive, you will get 20 cents per watt, up to 40% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. And if you are not low or moderate income and you are also not eligible for an electric utility incentive, you will get 50 cents per watt, up to 40% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. So that was a lot of numbers to throw out, throwing out some more numbers, but hopefully in a format that kind of ties them all together and makes them more clear and make more sense. So this is a sample budget for a PGE customer, or two PGE customers actually. On the left column, we have a non-income qualified customer, and on the right column, we have an income qualified customer. Both are installing a 6 kilowatt system. And here at the top, we have estimated the cost of the system to be $20,000 for both customers. This comes with a huge grain of salt. It's really hard to estimate system costs because it depends on a lot of specific factors, including the roof complexity, your current electrical system setup, your if you have to re-roof. All of these factors play into how much solar system will cost, but for this example, we're going to put a baseline at $20,000. So first, you apply the Energy Trust incentive. The non-income qualified individual gets $500, and the income qualified individual gets $7,200. Next, you apply the Oregon Department of Energy rebate. So the non-income qualified gets $1,200. The income qualified gets the full $5,000. And this leaves the out-of-pocket cost to customer for the non-income qualified at about $18,000, and for the income qualified at about $8,000. And then you apply the 30% ITC, leaving the final cost to customer before energy savings for the non-income qualified customer at about $13,000, and for the income qualified customer at about $5,500. This is another sample budget. It's very similar. The only difference is it's a Pacific Power customer instead of a PGE customer. And the only thing that this changes is the Energy Trust incentive is now at $6,000 instead of $7,200. And so the end cost to the customer for the income qualified customer is $6,300, so slightly more. When you are ready to consider your options, you might be wondering how to get started on this process. The great news is that Energy Trust of Oregon has a list of trade ally solar contractors, and these contractors are approved to offer the Energy Trust incentive. They are rigorously qualified through Energy Trust and are familiar with all Energy Trust design and installation requirements. So they are a pre-vetted source of solar contractors that you can look into. If you are interested in this, you can go directly to the Energy Trust of Oregon website and request a custom analysis and bid. So by filling out this free and easy to use form on their website, you will be contacted by 3 trade ally contractors with a custom analysis and bid for solar on your property. These bids are entirely free. This tool is great and easy to use. So this is where we recommend you get started. And the link to this site is in the chat from earlier, and I'm going to repost it just in case new people came on and missed that first post. So once you've selected your installer and signed your contract, the installation process begins. This is a turnkey service, so once you sign, your contractor handles the rest of the project. The installation itself typically takes just 1 or 2 days for a residential project. However, before the installation begins, your contractor must obtain permits, apply for the Energy Trust incentive, and apply for net metering with the utility. There may also be a waiting period before your contractor can get you onto their construction calendar, depending on how busy they are. So this can take some time before the actual installation is taking place. So then the installation takes 1 or 2 days. After the system is installed, your contractor will manage all the inspections and grid interconnection, and this can take an additional couple of weeks. And then once your utility approves your interconnection, that's when your system will start producing clean electricity, and you're officially good to go with your solar system moving forward. So that concludes the presentation part of this webinar. We have lots of time for questions, so I really encourage you to post them in the Q&A box. I see there's already one in there. So Phil asks, is 1-to-1 net metering at risk of changing in Oregon? Could it change to 2-to-1, which would result in less savings? So this is a good question. What the 1-to-1 net metering is referring to is right now you receive basically the savings you receive, or the credits you receive on the electricity you are exporting through your solar system is equivalent to how much you would pay to draw that electricity from the grid, which is about 14 cents per kilowatt hour, I believe. And this is a fairly high net metering price, which means that you are getting paid a fairly high rate from the utility to export your electricity onto the grid. In other states, they don't have this high of a rate. Sometimes they pay you back the wholesale rate for electricity. So the utility would pay you essentially what they would pay a utility scale electricity producer for that electricity, instead of what they would charge a consumer for it. I don't see a risk of this changing in the near future in Oregon. It certainly could. It's changed in other states, but I don't see a near-term threat as far as it goes in Oregon. Jennifer asks, are there low-cost loans for low-income homeowners for the cost to install solar and or electrify homes? This is also a great question. So I would say, so there's, in general, 3 types of ways you can finance a solar system. One is to buy it outright. One is to lease it, which requires no upfront cost. And one is to get loans or financing. Some loans are better than others. I know that there are some nonprofits and co-ops that are working to provide more low interest or zero interest loans for solar. One that I've heard about recently is Seeds for Sol, so SEEDS for SOL. And they are working on providing zero interest loans for solar, think specifically in Corvallis. There may be other organizations like that. There's also community solar options for low-income homeowners or renters. You don't need to own your roof to participate in that. And for the community solar program, if you qualify as low or moderate income, you automatically have to receive 40% savings on your energy bill through that program. And usually community solar programs will have like 10% of the subscription set aside for low to moderate income subscribers. So that could be another great option to access clean electricity, but at a reduced price. But I don't know much more detail about specific loans besides the kind of Seeds for Soul example. Bob asked if this presentation will be posted anywhere or emailed out. Yes, it will. It will be posted to our YouTube channel, which is Solar Oregon on YouTube. And both the link to the YouTube channel and the PDF of the slides will be emailed out to all of you who registered through our Eventbrite page. Phil asked, do panels degrade over time, producing less energy? Would a homeowner need to add more panels in the future so the panels cover electricity needs? So solar panels, typical warranties for solar panels are around 25 years. However, it's expected that they last longer than that, somewhere between 30 and 40 years. However, this is an ongoing research question, mainly because most solar panels have been installed fairly recently within the last 25 years, and so they haven't reached their end of life yet. And so there is a lot of ongoing research on this question. They are expected to degrade at about 1% of their total output per year. So yes, they do degrade slowly over time. Usually people don't add more panels. They wait until their system has reached its end of life, and then they replace the system entirely. Although you could talk to your solar contractor about this. And another thing to think about, some solar contractors have production guarantee warranties. And so this is saying, like, we guarantee that over this course of time, your panel will produce at least, let's say, 95% of the electricity that we predict it will produce through each year for this many of years. And so this can be a great way to ensure that your solar panels are producing the electricity that the contractor said they would produce. John asked, incentives for home with 6-year-old breaker system who want to add battery storage and also panels to cover plug-in electric vehicle. So I'm not sure about the 6-year-old break-even system. Is that talking about your breaker, or is that talking about something else? What I can say is that the ITC provides both solar and storage incentives. The Oregon State rebate provides both solar and storage incentives if you install them at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you can use the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive to cover some of the cost of just the solar system. They don't have an incentive for storage specifically. And then in regards to having your panels cover your plug-in electric vehicle, this would affect how you size your solar system. So when you're talking to your solar contractor, you're going to want to tell them that you have a plug-in electric vehicle. And this is something for if you don't have an electric vehicle but are planning to get one next year or in 2 years, you might also want to tell your solar contractor this, because then they can size the system to produce enough electricity to charge that plug-in electric vehicle, or at least partially charge that plug-in electric vehicle from the solar itself. It's a lot easier to oversize your system in the beginning and then add the electric vehicle, then add the electric vehicle, and then try to add more solar later. Although that can be done, it just might add additional costs. So if you can think through what your electricity usage will look like in the near future, this is something you want to communicate to your solar contractor before sizing your system. John says, we donate some power to PGE at the end of March every year. Yeah, so if you do oversize your system and you are receiving more credits in a given year than you are using, those excess credits will be donated to back to PGE. I'm not sure about all utilities, but I know PGE has the program where the credits get donated back to this pool that supports weatherization and energy costs for low-income homeowners and renters or PGE customers. And so those credits aren't going to waste. You just won't see the cost savings from them yourself. Bob asked, is Google Sunroof a decent place for homeowners to look at how good your roof is for solar? I would say this is a good place to start to poke around and see what your solar potential might look like. It's not the end all be all, and solar contractors might have differing opinions or more accurate data on what your actual solar potential is. So it can be a good place to start, but I wouldn't cancel the idea of solar in your mind if Google Sunroof says it wouldn't work. I would still reach out to a solar contractor. It's free for them to give you an analysis and bid, and they will give you a more accurate answer on that. Decker Irma asks, is there a way that we can get a rechargeable electricity generator to use during emergencies? Yeah, so a rechargeable electricity generator is essentially a battery. There are batteries that aren't hooked up to your solar system, and your electrical panels are kind of a separate box that you can charge up and then use. It won't cover like you can't connect it to the circuits in your home that control your lights and stuff like that, but you could plug a lamp into it, you could plug your phone into it, your laptop, stuff like that, and have it be a good backup in that way. I don't have a specific brand or model, but I know that exists. Yeah, that would be something to Google and look into yourself. While we wait for any other questions that might trickle in, I'm going to launch one final poll, and this helps us learn from these webinars and improve them in the future. So if you have the chance, appreciate you filling that out quickly. Awesome. Thank you all for filling that out. Bob asked how many folks are on the seminar. I think the top number that we had was 12. Phil asked, there are a lot of solar contractors out there with ads on Facebook, YouTube, etc. How do we sift through who is local and reputable? So again, I would really recommend using a Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor. These are rigorously qualified by Energy Trust, known to be reputable. Energy Trust checks their references and that they have a good history of installing solar and all these different things. And so that's kind of a first step to sift through them. And then if you fill out this request analysis and bid tool, you get 3 bids back. You can compare those bids against each other and see which one looks like the best deal to you, makes the most sense to you. That's how I would get started on that process. You also, another thing you could do is ask the solar contractor for some names of previous customers and give them a call and ask about their experience. Of course, this isn't going to be an unbiased view. They're definitely going to pick customers that had a good experience. But that's a way to just have some more conversations with people that have worked with them previously. John Stevens asks, can the battery backup be added to a system that already has a gas generator backup? I believe the answer to that is yes. I haven't actually received that question before, but I don't see a reason why that would be a problem. So my best guess is yes. I would definitely ask a solar contractor to be sure. Thank you all for your questions. I'll hang out on here until 12:50 in case anyone thinks of any more questions, but if you want to hop off, thank you for coming. Look for more of our webinars and events in the future if you enjoyed this one, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bob asks, where can I get more information on the income limited incentives? So let's see if I posted it in the chat. So the Solar Within Reach incentive, I posted a link to that in the chat, and that's on the Energy Trust website, and that's a great resource to check out. I will put, if you Google, I don't have the exact link up now, which I probably should. If you Google Oregon Solar plus Storage rebate, you can learn more about the low and moderate income options for that. I'm trying to think of, I'll put seeds for Sol in the chat. You could check that out. And then community solar is also in the chat. And that's another great way to access solar, especially if you don't own your roof, you can still access it. Thank you, Tom. Phil asks, if I'm familiar with a local contractor who seems reputable and experienced, but is not an Energy Trust ally, does it make sense to ask them why they are not an Energy Trust ally and what determines membership as an Energy Trust ally? I think that makes sense to ask them. It is a process to go through to become an Energy Trust ally, so potentially they just are new and haven't gone through that process, or haven't had the time and capacity to go through that process. I would definitely recommend getting multiple quotes before you decide on one contractor to make sure that they are reputable and providing you with a competitive price. But I wouldn't, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad contractor if they're not an Energy Trust contractor. It just means that they haven't been as rigorously vetted by an outside source. Great. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to end the webinar now. Oh, I have one more chat. Thank you, Phil. All right. Have a nice day, everyone.